The sky above Epsilon V was a dull, muted gray, streaked with clouds that seemed heavier than air itself. The wind whistled through the jagged rock formations, carrying with it the acrid scent of sulfur and the faint tang of ionized energy from the distant alien warships hovering in the atmosphere. On the cracked, barren ground below, a small human squad crouched behind a ridge, their armor battered, their breaths heavy, their eyes fixed on the approaching enemy. Kale stood at the edge of the ridge, hands resting lightly on the hilt of the spear they had brought with them. The weapon was unlike anything the humans had used in years, long, carved from a strange alloy that seemed to hum faintly, with intricate etchings running along its length. It looked almost ceremonial, fragile compared to the sleek energy rifles the humans had abandoned in favor of stealth and mobility. But Kale felt something about it, a weight beyond the physical. It was a weight of purpose. "Are you seriously going to charge with that thing?" whispered Lena, one of Kale's closest comrades. Her eyes flicked nervously toward the sky, where Zeathian ships glinted in the haze. Their design was alien in every sense, curved, spindly, but packed with technology that humans could barely comprehend. Energy beams snaked along the hulls like living veins. "You know they'll laugh at you." Kale didn't answer. He had heard the laughter before, in the corridors of their command ships, in the intercepted transmissions from the Zeathians. They called humans primitive, slow, and predictable. They said that a species still relying on such crude weapons had no place in the stars. Kale let the words sink into the back of his mind, letting them fuel something colder and sharper: determination. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying with it a low, metallic hum from the sky. The Zeathian fleet had changed formation, moving as one organism with impossible precision. Kale's pulse quickened. He could feel the tension in the air, the collective heartbeat of both sides, waiting for someone to make the first move. The humans were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and outclassed, but Kale knew something the aliens didn't. They had underestimated what humans could do when pushed to the edge. "Kale," Lena said again, softer this time, "this isn't like the drills back on Terra. We're talking about real ships, real firepower. That spear, it's all we have that they don't expect," Kale interrupted, his voice calm, almost serene. "And that's the advantage." A ripple of disbelief ran through the squad. Some lowered their weapons slightly, unsure whether to take him seriously. Others just stared at the alien fleet, their fear plain on their faces. Kale didn't look back at them. He focused on the spear in his hands, running his fingers over the glowing etchings. They pulsed faintly, almost as if responding to his touch. Something deep in his gut told him it wasn't just a weapon. It was a key. The first Zeathian scouts appeared on the horizon, sleek and fast, gliding over the terrain with uncanny grace. Their energy blades flickered as they scanned the ridge, and one of them pointed directly at the human squad. A burst of static laughter echoed from their communication channels, crisp and cruel. "So it begins," Kale murmured, shifting his stance. He gripped the spear tighter, feeling its hum synchronize with the quickening beat of his heart. His mind raced, calculating angles, trajectories, weaknesses in the approaching ships. They were too fast for rifles to hit reliably. Missiles could be intercepted, but a spear. The humans' old instincts, honed for centuries on primitive worlds, could turn this into something unexpected. The first scout dove, banking sharply toward their position. Kale timed his breath, counting the rhythm of its approach. At the right moment, he leaped forward, spear raised and thrust. The tip of the spear glowed bright, a streak of light cutting through the air. There was a sharp crack, a high-pitched whine as the energy field around the Zeathian scout shattered. The alien twisted in disbelief before spiraling into the ground in a ball of fire. The squad froze. No one had expected that. Then Lena laughed, breathless and loud, a sound of pure exhilaration. "Did you see that? You actually—" Kale didn't stop. More scouts came, faster, more numerous. He pivoted, dodging, ducking under their strikes, and the spear followed like an extension of his body. Each thrust, each swing, disrupted the alien formation in ways rifles could never have managed. It was a dance, precise and deadly, the humans moving with instinctive coordination that the Zeathians couldn't predict. From the cliff above, other human squads watched in awe as Kale's figure moved like a blur, a lone point of light against the dark sky. Their previous fear began to transform, inch by inch, into belief. If one human could wield a spear with such effectiveness, what could the others do when inspired by that courage? One of the Zeathian commanders snarled, their voice echoing over the battlefield in translation channels. "This is impossible. How is a single human doing this?" Kale heard it and smiled faintly. He didn't answer. There was no need. Every strike, every movement spoke louder than words. The spear carved through the air, leaving arcs of glowing energy in its wake, each one a statement. Humans were not to be underestimated. Time stretched and bent as the humans and aliens clashed. Kale's mind worked tirelessly, calculating, predicting, reacting. He felt the spear resonate with the ground beneath his feet, with the air itself, as if the weapon was alive and understanding him. Each strike against the Zeathian seemed to draw out more of its hidden power, energy flowing along the etched lines and amplifying the force of his attacks. A sudden gust of wind carried a blinding flash from above. A Zeathian warship, massive and bristling with energy cannons, descended toward the battlefield. Its presence was intimidating, dwarfing everything below it. The soldiers froze, their courage faltering for a moment. Kale's jaw tightened. He had anticipated this. "Move back," Lena shouted, fear clear in her voice. But Kale shook his head. Retreat was never the answer. Instead, he raised the spear, feeling it vibrate, alive in his hands. The wind seemed to howl in agreement, carrying the charge of his determination across the plains. He could feel the weight of generations of human perseverance, of survival against odds that should have broken them long ago. With a roar that was more instinct than thought, Kale launched himself forward. The ground shook beneath his feet as he ran toward the warship, dodging smaller drones and blasting debris. At the last moment he leaped, soaring higher than the tallest ridge, spear aimed straight at the ship's core energy field. A beam of brilliant light shot from the spear's tip, piercing the shield and striking the hull. Sparks, fire, and alien screeches filled the air as the warship shuddered violently, then spiraled out of control, crashing into the barren landscape. The battlefield fell silent for a heartbeat. Then Lena and the squad erupted in cheers, their laughter echoing across the plains. Humans who had been frozen in fear found themselves moving forward, emboldened, inspired by one man and one ancient spear. Even the Zeathians hesitated, scanning the humans with disbelief and growing unease. Kale landed on the ground, spear in hand, chest heaving. He looked around at the wide-eyed soldiers, their expressions a mix of exhilaration and fear. This was only the beginning. He knew the spear had more secrets, more power, and more lessons to teach. But for now, the humans had learned a fundamental truth. Courage, ingenuity, and determination could challenge even the most advanced enemy. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying with it a faint hum from the spear, as if acknowledging Kale's victory. The Zeathians were not gone, but the humans had carved a small, shining space of triumph in the gray desolation of Epsilon V. And Kale knew, deep down, that the spear, and humanity itself, was just getting started. The horizon glowed faintly with the fires of the crashed Zeathian warship, smoke rising in thick columns that twisted like snakes in the muted gray sky. Kale stood among the scattered rocks, the spear still clutched in his hands, its faint hum steady and reassuring. Around him, the surviving humans moved cautiously, scanning the plains for further threats. Their breaths came in uneven gasps, adrenaline still coursing through every vein, but their fear had shifted into a different emotion: hope. Lena jogged up to Kale, her face streaked with dust and sweat, but her eyes alight with excitement. "I can't believe you did that," she said, voice shaking with disbelief and awe. "A spear, just a spear." Kale's lips curved into a faint smile. "It's not just a spear," he said quietly. "It's more than that. It's a tool, a key, and we're only beginning to understand it." Others in the squad gathered around, murmuring questions, admiration, and incredulity. The Zeathians were supposed to be invincible, their technology years ahead of humanity's. Yet here was one man, with a weapon from a bygone era, turning the battlefield in ways no one could have imagined. Even Kale himself felt the pull of disbelief at the force he had unleashed, but it was tempered by a deep certainty. He had tapped into something that went beyond skill or technology. A distant rumble drew their attention skyward. Kale's sharp eyes caught movement above, a new wave of Zeathian drones, faster and more heavily armored than the scouts they had destroyed. The humans tensed, instinctively ducking behind rocky outcrops, rifles raised. Kale didn't flinch. He lifted the spear, feeling the vibrations run up his arms, the faint glow of the etchings intensifying as if sensing the approaching threat. "They're coming," he said. "And they'll think what we did was luck. We'll show them it's something else." The drones descended, their sleek frames cutting through the clouds like knives. The humans opened fire, but Kale could see the futility in their efforts. Energy shields flared around the alien machines with every hit, shrugging off the bullets with barely a flicker. He studied their movement, noting patterns in their flight, pauses, and angles that seemed repetitive, almost predictable. "Watch the gaps," Kale shouted to his squad. "Don't try to hit them directly. Use their rhythm against them." With a sudden burst of speed, he leapt from cover, spear arcing in a wide swing. A drone came too close, and the tip of the spear cut into its hull, a streak of light burning through its protective energy field. The machine wobbled, spinning out of control before crashing into the rocky terrain. Another followed, and Kale danced across the field with almost inhuman reflexes, striking drones down in a pattern that seemed both chaotic and precise. The humans began to see a pattern themselves. Lena shouted, "Aim for the gaps in their shields. Follow his moves." One by one, the soldiers mimicked Kale, using the environment and timing to their advantage. Even without the spear, human ingenuity began to shine, a combination of instinct, observation, and adaptability that the Zeathians had clearly not accounted for. Above them, the sky was alive with motion. Drones collided, some exploding in flashes of blue and orange light, others forced to retreat. Kale's focus never wavered. He could feel the energy of the spear thrumming with each movement, as if guiding him, as if it wanted him to understand the full extent of what it could do. And in that moment, Kale realized that the weapon was more than metal and etchings. It was a conduit, a bridge between human intuition and raw energy that even the aliens could not master. Suddenly, a larger shadow swept over the battlefield. A massive Zeathian strike cruiser had descended, its energy cannons charging with a high-pitched whine. Its sheer size dwarfed the humans, and the ground quaked under its presence. Soldiers froze, fear gripping them like iron chains. Lena grabbed Kale's arm, her eyes wide. "We're done for," she whispered. Kale shook his head. "Not yet, we've only begun." He scanned the terrain, looking for a vantage point. A ridge of jagged rock to the north seemed perfect, high enough to strike from above but with cover to shield him from direct fire. With a nod to his squad, Kale sprinted toward it, weaving through falling debris and laser fire. The humans followed, emboldened by his leadership, their fear giving way to determination. Reaching the ridge, Kale planted the spear firmly in the ground and raised his arms. The etchings flared with brilliant light, and a low hum resonated through the rocks, vibrating through the air and into the soldiers' bones. The Zeathians paused mid-assault, confused by the sudden phenomenon. Kale took a deep breath and focused. He remembered the stories of human warriors from centuries past, the ones who had fought against impossible odds with nothing but courage and cleverness. They had faced predators, hostile environments, and each other, and yet had endured. That legacy surged through him, lending strength to his arms, precision to his movements, and clarity to his mind. With a powerful swing, the spear unleashed a wave of energy that struck the cruiser's hull. Sparks flew, panels ruptured, and alarms blared across the battlefield. The humans cheered as the massive ship shuddered, then began to tilt, its trajectory faltering. Kale didn't stop. He leapt again, striking the ship's weaker points with a series of rapid, calculated swings. Each strike left arcs of glowing light, slicing through shielding and armor alike. Below, the human squad followed his lead. Inspired by Kale's mastery, they began to coordinate attacks, exploiting the gaps he created, using terrain, timing, and strategy to multiply the effect of his spear. What had begun as a desperate defense was turning into a symphony of human ingenuity, every action flowing from instinct, observation, and raw courage. The Zeathians were faltering. Their confidence, once absolute, began to crack. The strike cruiser wobbled, sparks cascading down its side as its energy systems overloaded. Smaller drones collided mid-air in confusion, some falling to the ground in flames. The humans pressed their advantage, each soldier moving as part of a larger whole, their fear replaced by determination, their despair by hope. Kale felt the spear's vibration intensify, almost as if responding to the rhythm of the battle itself. It guided him, showing him angles and weaknesses, amplifying his intuition. He understood then that the spear was not simply a weapon, it was a partner, a reflection of human will and creativity in a form that could challenge even the most advanced alien technology. The battle raged for hours, though it felt like minutes to Kale. The humans adapted to every new attack, exploiting weaknesses, improvising tactics, and pushing back against an enemy that had believed victory was guaranteed. Time and again, Kale struck from unexpected angles, the spear glowing with increasing brilliance, cutting through the air and leaving arcs of light across the battlefield. At last, the Zeathians began to retreat, their formations broken, their confidence shattered. Even the massive strike cruiser, once a symbol of terror, now burned in the distance, a testament to human resilience and audacity. The humans cheered, rushing forward with renewed courage, their fear replaced by the exhilaration of victory against impossible odds. Kale stood on the ridge, spear in hand, chest heaving, eyes scanning the horizon. He knew this was only the beginning. The Zeathians would return, stronger and more determined, but so would humanity. And with courage, ingenuity, and the unexpected power of the spear, Kale knew they could face anything. The wind carried the scent of smoke and energy across the plains, but also something new, the scent of possibility. Humanity had proven that fear could be turned into strength, that strategy and intuition could overcome technology, and that even a single person, armed with courage and determination, could inspire an entire species to rise. Kale lowered the spear and looked at his squad. Their faces were a mixture of awe, relief, and excitement. They had seen the impossible, and now they believed it could be done. Humanity had carved a small but shining space of triumph in the gray desolation of Epsilon V. And Kale knew that this spark would grow, igniting courage across the stars. The sky above Epsilon V shimmered with residual energy from the recent battle, painting streaks of pale blue and orange across the heavy gray clouds. Smoke spiraled upward from the wreckage of Zeathian drones and the massive strike cruiser, a stark reminder of the power Kale had unleashed with his spear. Despite the destruction, a tense quiet settled over the battlefield. The humans had survived, even won small victories, but the war was far from over. The Zeathians would not forget this day. Kale moved among the soldiers, checking injuries, offering words of encouragement, and keeping his eyes on the horizon. Each step was careful, yet purposeful. He had learned that even a brief lapse in awareness could invite disaster. The spear pulsed faintly in his hands, almost as if sensing his vigilance, its glow a steady heartbeat beneath the surface. Lena jogged up to him, face streaked with dust and grime but lit with excitement. "Kale, they won't believe what happened down there, not even their commanders." Kale nodded, his gaze still fixed ahead. "Doesn't matter if they believe it or not, we can't get complacent. They'll regroup, and when they do, we need to be ready." The humans had set up temporary defenses along the ridge, barricades of rocks and scavenged metal, creating makeshift positions that allowed them to survey the battlefield. Soldiers whispered in small groups, recounting what they had witnessed, eyes wide as they spoke of the spear's power and Kale's skill. Even those who had doubted him now seemed to carry a spark of newfound confidence. A rumble in the distance interrupted the quiet, sending a shiver across the ridge. Kale crouched, spear in hand, and scanned the horizon. A new fleet of Zeathian ships emerged through the clouds, larger and faster than before. Their shapes were angular, ominous, and designed for destruction. They moved with precision, a hive-like coordination that was terrifying to behold. The humans froze, some gripping their weapons tighter, others simply staring. Kale's jaw tightened. He could sense the Zeathians' surprise at the earlier defeat, but he also sensed their growing determination. They would not retreat again without striking hard, and this time they would bring more than scouts or small cruisers. "Positions," he ordered, his voice calm but firm. "Remember what we did before. Timing, observation, and courage. That is how we fight them." The soldiers moved quickly, some helping the wounded, others taking cover behind barricades. Kale climbed higher on the ridge, seeking a vantage point from which he could see the entire approach. From there, he observed the Zeathian formation, noting weak points in their spacing and anticipating how they might attack. He was beginning to see a pattern, a rhythm in their movement, and he knew he could use it. The first wave of Zeathian drones descended, sleek and fast. Energy blades hummed and sparked as they sliced through the clouds, aiming straight for the human positions. Kale leapt into action, spear raised, moving with a speed and precision that seemed impossible. Each swing was deliberate, cutting through shields, striking exposed machinery, and forcing the drones to adjust their path. The humans followed his lead, timing their attacks with his movements, creating a wave of coordinated defense that the aliens had not expected. It was more than skill, it was ingenuity. Kale's mind raced, calculating angles, timing, and patterns in real time. He adjusted his movements to exploit gaps in the drone's coordination, using the terrain to his advantage. The spear glowed brighter with each successful strike, arcs of light slicing across the battlefield, leaving trails that seemed almost alive. The Zeathians faltered. Their precision and confidence wavered as the humans adapted faster than they could predict. One by one, drones collided, fell from the sky, or were forced to retreat. The humans pressed their advantage, emboldened by the sight of Kale's mastery and the spear's strange, growing power. Suddenly, a massive Zeathian warship appeared from the clouds, its energy cannons charging in anticipation of the attack. The sheer size of it was overwhelming, dwarfing the ridge and the humans below. Kale's eyes narrowed. This was the real test, the enemy's elite strike vessel, a machine designed to crush entire planets into submission. Its arrival sent tremors through the ground, rattling the temporary barricades and scattering dust into the wind. Kale gritted his teeth and tightened his grip on the spear. "This is it," he muttered, almost to himself. "The real challenge." He leapt from the ridge, landing with precision on a lower plateau, spear aimed at the approaching warship. The humans followed, instinctively trusting his judgment, their fear now tempered by determination. Lena stayed close, shouting encouragement to those who faltered, ensuring that no one lost focus. The warship fired, beams of pure energy slicing through the air, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Kale dodged, rolled, and swung the spear in a wide arc. The tip glowed brightly, releasing a pulse of energy that disrupted the warship's shields. Sparks cascaded along its hull as the ship wobbled slightly, a crack appearing where the energy pulse had struck. Kale didn't hesitate. He moved faster, striking the same spot repeatedly, each swing more precise than the last. The energy from the spear seemed to resonate with the warship's structure, amplifying his attacks in ways that defied logic. Below him, the humans coordinated their own strikes, using debris and terrain to create distractions, to force the ship into vulnerable positions. The battle raged for what felt like hours. Drones and smaller ships swarmed the humans, but Kale's leadership and the spear's power kept them in check. Every swing, every movement, was a blend of instinct and strategy. Kale felt the spear guide him, as if it could see the weak points in the enemy that his own eyes could not. He realized then that the spear was more than a weapon. It was a tool for connecting human intuition with raw energy, a way to level the playing field against an enemy that had thought itself invincible. The humans' courage grew with each victory. Soldiers who had been terrified at the start of the battle now moved with confidence, inspired by Kale's skill. They adapted, innovated, and improvised, turning fear into strength. The battlefield became a dance, humans and aliens moving in a deadly, chaotic rhythm, but always with the humans finding new ways to strike, to survive, to win. At a critical moment, the warship fired a massive energy blast, aimed directly at the ridge where most of the humans were positioned. Kale acted instinctively, leaping high into the air, spear raised. The tip glowed brighter than ever before, and when he struck the ground with it, a shockwave erupted, splitting the energy blast into harmless arcs that scattered across the rocks. The humans cheered, the sound echoing across the battlefield. Kale landed gracefully, turning to see his squad moving with renewed determination. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for victory, for the chance to prove that humanity was more than primitive weapons and fragile bodies. They were fighters, strategists, and innovators, capable of adapting to any challenge. The warship wobbled, sparks cascading down its sides, systems failing under the relentless assault. Smaller Zeathian drones collided with it, caught in the chaos, while the humans pressed their advantage. Kale's spear glowed with increasing intensity, arcs of light slicing through the sky, leaving trails that seemed almost alive, a visual testament to human ingenuity and courage. Finally, with a final, decisive strike, Kale pierced the core of the warship. A brilliant explosion lit up the battlefield, sending shockwaves through the air. The ship spiraled out of control, crashing into the plains with a deafening roar. The humans cheered, their voices rising in a chorus of triumph and relief. Kale stood among them, spear in hand, chest heaving, eyes scanning the horizon. He knew the Zeathians would return, perhaps stronger, but so would humanity. They had learned to trust their instincts, to innovate, and to fight with courage and ingenuity. This battle had shown them the true power of human determination. Lena ran up to him, her eyes wide with awe. "Kale, you did it again. You split the battlefield in ways they couldn't even predict." "How?" Kale shook his head. "It's not just me, it's all of us. The spear is a tool, yes, but it's our minds, our instincts, our courage that make it work. That's what they don't understand. They've underestimated us for too long." The humans gathered around, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, inspired by one man's courage and one ancient weapon's power. Kale looked at the spear, feeling its hum resonate with his own heartbeat. There was more to learn, more to discover, and more battles to come. But for now, humanity had proven something important. They could face any challenge, adapt, and overcome. The Zeathians had been surprised once. Next time they might think they understood the humans. But Kale knew better. Humans were unpredictable, clever, and relentless. and with courage and determination, there was no limit to what they could achieve. As the sun dipped behind the clouds, casting long shadows across the battlefield, Kale raised the spear once more. It pulsed in response, glowing brightly as if acknowledging the victory. The humans around him cheered, their spirits lifted, ready for whatever came next. In that moment, Kale knew that this was more than a battle, it was the beginning of a legend. The air above Epsilon V trembled with tension. The Zeathians, humiliated by their repeated defeats, had withdrawn temporarily, regrouping in the high clouds that stretched above the gray plains. But Kale knew it was only a matter of time before they returned, this time stronger, more determined, and likely more ruthless. The humans, though victorious in small skirmishes, were exhausted. Their weapons were strained, their energy reserves low, and the terrain offered little cover. Yet Kale felt no fear. In his hands, the spear pulsed with steady energy, almost as if sensing the storm to come, guiding him, strengthening him. He climbed a jagged cliff that overlooked the central battlefield, the wind tugging at his armor and hair. From this height he could see the entire valley, the wreckage of Zeathian ships, the scattered remains of drones, and the humans moving cautiously among the rocks and barricades. Above, the clouds swirled with unnatural motion, evidence of the Zeathian fleet gathering. Kale's eyes narrowed. He had a plan, one that relied not just on the spear's power but on human ingenuity, courage, and instinct, the traits the aliens had never truly understood. Lena approached, struggling up the rocks behind him. "Kale, what are you thinking?" she asked, breathless. "We can't fight them all at once. There's too many." Kale raised a hand, silencing her. "We're not just going to fight them. We're going to make them regret ever underestimating humans. Watch and learn." He planted the spear into the cliff edge, feeling the vibrations pulse through his hands, through his arms, through his very body. The etchings along its length glowed, brighter than ever, like lines of living light. The humans below stared, mesmerized, unsure what he was about to do. Kale closed his eyes for a moment, drawing on every instinct, every memory of humanity's long history of facing impossible odds. He could feel the spear responding, resonating with his intent. It was no longer just a weapon. It was a key, a conductor of energy that the humans had only begun to understand. The clouds above rumbled, and the first wave of Zeathian strike ships descended, faster and larger than anything Kale had faced before. Their energy cannons hummed, ready to cut the battlefield into ruin. Soldiers below fired as best they could, but their weapons barely scratched the shields of the approaching ships. Panic threatened to spread, but Kale's calm presence steadied them. He leapt from the cliff, spear raised, and as he descended, the weapon began to glow with a blinding light. With a roar of determination, Kale swung the spear in a wide arc. Energy erupted from the tip, a luminous wave that struck the first of the Zeathian ships. Sparks flew, shields shattered, and the massive vessel wobbled, caught off guard by the sudden surge of energy. The humans below erupted in cheers, their morale skyrocketing, but Kale didn't pause. He landed with precision and spun, striking again and again, each movement guided by intuition and experience. The Zeathians faltered. Their formations broke under the unexpected assault. Drones collided with each other and some smaller ships were forced to retreat into the clouds. But the true challenge was yet to come. The main fleet, a crescent of massive warships, hung in the sky like a dark omen. Kale's heart pounded, not with fear but with determination. This was the moment he had prepared for, the moment that would turn the tide of the battle and cement humanity's place among the stars. Kale raised the spear high above his head. Its glow intensified, sending streaks of light cascading across the battlefield. He could feel the energy building, resonating with the vibrations of the planet itself. Below, humans watched in awe as arcs of light began to stretch toward the sky, splitting the clouds in jagged, radiant lines. Kale's mind worked faster than ever, calculating the angles, the timing, the rhythm of his strikes, every motion amplified by the power flowing through the spear. With a powerful thrust, Kale drove the spear into the ground, sending a shockwave through the valley. Energy surged upward in a brilliant column, piercing the clouds and striking the nearest Xiathean warship. The impact tore through its shields and armor, leaving it spinning uncontrollably in the sky. Kale didn't stop. He jumped again, thrusting the spear forward with precision. The sky seemed to fracture under the force, a split of radiant light cutting through the gray clouds like a blade. The humans below cheered in disbelief. They had never seen anything like it. A single man, armed with an ancient weapon, had challenged the Xiatheans' fleet and was now splitting the sky itself. Every swing, every movement, was a statement of human ingenuity, courage, and determination. The Xiatheans were thrown into chaos. Their massive warships collided, shields overloaded, engines failing. Smaller ships tumbled from the clouds, unable to maintain formation. The humans pressed their advantage, moving with newfound courage, exploiting gaps Kale had created. Each strike of the spear seemed to synchronize with human efforts below, amplifying their impact. It was no longer just a battle. It was a display of humanity's adaptability and unyielding spirit. Kale moved with fluid precision, leaps and swings blending into a dance of energy and light. The spear's glow pulsed with increasing intensity, arcs of brilliance following his every motion. The Xiatheans tried to regroup, but their coordination was failing. Every ship he struck weakened the fleet further, and every human inspired by his actions became more daring, more confident, more unstoppable. One massive warship, larger than the rest, rose above the others, energy cannons blazing, intent on crushing the humans and the spear-wielding warrior. Kale's eyes narrowed. This was the culmination, the ultimate challenge. He took a running start along the ridge, spear held high, and leapt higher than he ever had. The wind tore at his armor, but he ignored it. Time slowed as he twisted in midair, spear aimed directly at the heart of the ship. When the spear struck, a column of energy erupted, splitting the clouds above in a blinding flash. The Xiathean warship shuddered, then exploded in a cascade of fire and light. The shockwave rippled across the battlefield, sending smaller ships tumbling and scattering the remaining drones. The humans below fell to their knees, staring upward in awe at the spectacle above. Kale landed, chest heaving, the spear glowing faintly as if acknowledging its own accomplishment. Lena ran to him, her face wet with tears of relief and excitement. "Kale, you did it. You split the sky." Kale shook his head, still catching his breath. "It's not just me. It's all of us. The spear is a tool, yes, but it's human courage, determination, and creativity that make it work. That's what they can't understand." The humans rallied, inspired beyond measure. They pressed forward, taking advantage of the disorganized Xiathean remnants, moving with precision and courage. Kale's spear had become a symbol, a beacon of hope and ingenuity. Even the most fearful soldiers now fought with confidence, knowing that humanity could adapt, innovate, and overcome the most impossible odds. Above, the clouds began to settle, the fractures of light slowly fading, leaving behind streaks of color that reflected the fire and energy of the battle. The Xiatheans had been defeated, not just by force, but by human spirit and ingenuity. Kale lowered the spear, feeling its hum soften as if satisfied. He looked at the horizon, knowing that this victory was only a beginning. The humans gathered around him, their voices rising in celebration, their exhaustion replaced by exhilaration. They had faced the impossible and they had triumphed. Kale could see it in their eyes, the spark of something greater, something unstoppable. Humanity had proven that courage, ingenuity, and determination could challenge even the most advanced enemies. Kale raised the spear once more, a silent signal to the humans below. It pulsed faintly in response, arcs of light tracing along the etchings as if alive. The humans cheered, their spirits soaring, ready to face whatever came next. The Zeathians, once invincible in their arrogance, now knew the truth. Humans were unpredictable, clever, and relentless. As the sun dipped below the clouds, casting long shadows across the plains, Kale stood tall, spear in hand, watching the horizon. The sky had been split, the Zeathians humbled, and humanity had taken its first step toward legend. He knew there would be more battles, more challenges, and more enemies, but he also knew one truth above all. Humans would never stop, and with courage, ingenuity, and determination, there was nothing they could not overcome. The battlefield of Epsilon V was quiet now, but the silence carried a weight heavier than any storm. The fires from crashed Zeathian ships had dimmed into smoking ruins, and the drones that had once swarmed like a living tide were gone. The humans moved cautiously across the plains, checking on their wounded, gathering supplies, and repairing what little technology remained. Exhaustion was written on every face, but it was tempered by awe, relief, and a growing sense of triumph. Kale stood atop the highest ridge, spear planted firmly in the rock before him. Its glow pulsed faintly, a heartbeat in sync with his own. The sky above was slowly returning to normal, but faint streaks of luminous energy still arched across the clouds, reminders of the battle that had split the heavens. From here, Kale could see the scope of what they had accomplished. A victory that was not just tactical but symbolic, a statement to the galaxy that humans could not be dismissed. Lena approached, brushing dust from her armor, eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting another attack. "Kale, are they really gone?" she asked softly. "Did we actually win?" Kale shook his head slightly. "Not completely," he admitted. "The Zeathians are clever. They'll recover and they'll return. But what we've done today, we've shown them something they've never faced before, and that matters more than any victory." Around them, the human squads gathered, their faces bright with excitement, awe, and a kind of unshakable pride. Soldiers who had trembled in fear days ago now stood tall, speaking of strategies, innovations, and daring maneuvers that had turned the tide. Even the youngest recruits had stories of small, brilliant actions that, combined, had brought the enemy to its knees. Kale smiled faintly, realizing that the spear was not the only weapon humans had wielded today. Their minds, their courage, and their adaptability had been just as powerful. From the horizon, a new rumble could be heard, the distant sound of engines, but not Zeathian. A convoy of human reinforcements, previously delayed by the rough terrain, began to appear. Kale's squad cheered. Relief and joy surged through the ranks, mingling with the pride of those who had survived and fought. They had not only survived, they had prevailed, and now help was arriving to solidify their position. Kale turned his gaze back to the spear. Its glow had dimmed slightly, but he could feel the latent energy pulsing beneath the surface. This weapon, once thought ceremonial, had proven far more than anyone could imagine. It had channeled human courage and creativity into a force that no Zeathian technology could counter. It had given humanity an edge, not because of raw firepower, but because of the ingenuity and determination that Kale, and every human soldier alongside him, had brought to bear. The Zeathians would not forget this day. Their arrogance had been shattered. They had believed that humans were primitive, predictable, and incapable of true strategy or daring. Kale had proven otherwise, not with advanced weaponry, but with intuition, skill, and bravery that no machine could anticipate. The image of a single human leaping across the battlefield, spear glowing, and splitting the sky itself would be burned into their memories forever. As Kale surveyed the battlefield, he noticed movement in the distance. Small groups of Zeathians were retreating, limping across the plains toward the edge of the planet's atmosphere. Their formations were broken, engines damaged, morale shattered. Even the most determined of their commanders seemed hesitant, realizing that underestimating humans had been their gravest mistake. The aliens would regroup, yes, but the memory of today would haunt them, and that gave Kale a measure of satisfaction. Lena stepped closer, her voice soft but insistent. Kale, what happens now? We've fought, we've survived, but the galaxy isn't going to forget this. The Zeathians might come back with more ships, more weapons. Kale's eyes softened as he looked at her, then at the soldiers around them, their faces lit with hope and courage. Then we'll be ready. Today wasn't just a battle, it was a lesson. Humans are adaptable, unpredictable, and relentless. We've proven that our courage and ingenuity are as powerful as any weapon. The Zeathians may return, but they will never underestimate us again. Below the ridge, the humans began to consolidate their position. They moved with a sense of unity that had been forged in the heat of battle. Every action, from repairing equipment to tending the wounded, carried a quiet strength. Kale realized that the spear had become more than a weapon. It had become a symbol, a rallying point for humanity. Its energy pulsed faintly as if echoing the resolve of every human on the battlefield. Kale descended the ridge slowly, spear in hand. The humans followed, a mix of curiosity and reverence in their eyes. They had seen him wield the spear, and they had seen what human courage could accomplish. They no longer saw themselves as small or weak in comparison to the alien invaders. They were thinkers, warriors, and innovators, capable of standing against impossible odds. Reaching the center of the battlefield, Kale stood among his squad, surveying the wreckage of Zeathian ships and drones. Sparks still rose from damaged energy systems, and smoke twisted lazily into the sky. The human survivors moved carefully, collecting what they could, patching wounds, and preparing for whatever came next. Even in the midst of exhaustion, there was a quiet exhilaration in the air, a recognition that they had done the impossible. Lena approached him once more, gesturing toward the fallen Zeathian commander who had barely survived the battle. They'll remember this, we'll make sure they do. But what about the spear? What is it really? How does it do what it does? Kale knelt beside the weapon, running his fingers along the etched lines. I don't know everything, he admitted. It's old, older than any human civilization I know of, but it reacts to courage, to determination, to creativity. It amplifies what humans already have inside them. That's why we could do what we did, not just because of the spear, but because of us. The soldiers gathered closer, listening intently. Kale continued, remember this day. Remember that even when the odds are impossible, humans have a way of finding strength in each other, in their minds, and in their courage. Today we split the sky, but tomorrow we can build something even greater. In the distance, the first signs of dawn began to appear, casting long streaks of light across the battlefield. The smoke and chaos of the previous hours glimmered in the new light, revealing the full scope of the destruction and of the human victory. Kale raised the spear, its glow faint but steady. It was a beacon now, a sign of hope for everyone who saw it, a reminder that courage could shape the future. The humans cheered, a sound that carried across the plains, echoing against the cliffs and ruins. They were no longer survivors, they were victors, legends in the making. The Zeathians might return, but humanity had proven that their resolve could never be underestimated. Kale looked at Lena and the other soldiers, a quiet pride swelling in his chest. Together, they had done the impossible. Kale lowered the spear, feeling its hum settle into a gentle vibration. The battle was over for now, but its effects would ripple across the galaxy. Stories of a human who leapt across the battlefield, wielding a glowing spear and splitting the sky itself, would be told for generations. Humans would be remembered not as primitive, but as courageous, clever, and unstoppable. Even the young soldiers, who had doubted themselves at the start, now moved with confidence, inspired by what they had witnessed. Kale knew that this victory was not just about destroying ships or defeating enemies. It was about proving a fundamental truth. Humans were capable of greatness, even when the odds seemed impossible. The wind carried the faint hum of the spear across the plains, intertwining with the sounds of the recovering humans. Kale stood silently for a moment, taking it all in, the devastation, the courage, the hope, and the undeniable proof of humanity's strength. He realized that the spear had been more than a weapon. It had been a mirror reflecting the best qualities of humanity: courage, ingenuity, resilience, and determination. Lena placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice soft. "Kale, this is only the beginning, isn't it?" Kale nodded. "Yes, today we fought and we won. Tomorrow we will build, adapt, and be ready for whatever comes next. Humanity is more than a species, it's an idea, a force that cannot be contained or predicted, and we've shown that today." The sun rose higher, its golden light spilling across the plains, illuminating the humans' victory in full. Kale raised the spear one last time, a symbol of hope, strength, and the unyielding spirit of humanity. The Zeathians might return, but they would never forget this day, nor would they underestimate humans again. The humans cheered once more, voices rising together in unison. They were no longer just survivors. They were a force, unstoppable and inspired. Kale looked out across the battlefield, knowing that this moment would be remembered forever. Humanity had split the sky, challenged the impossible, and emerged stronger than ever. And in that quiet, radiant dawn, Kale knew one truth above all. Humans were not defined by the weapons they held, nor by their enemies' expectations. They were defined by courage, by ingenuity, by the unshakable belief that no matter the odds, they could rise. And that belief had just reshaped the galaxy itself.